This week on Art on the Air, we feature the new Chesterton Arts Center President and Executive Director, Hannah Hammond-Hagman, about her background and plans for the center. Next, we feature ceramicist Samantha Purze discussing her experience as an artist in residence at Art Barn. Our spotlight is on Memorial Opera House's production of Irving Berlin's Holiday Inn, the musical, running through December 12th.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m., plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That's Breck, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. And we'd like to welcome to Art in the Air Spotlight from the Memorial Opera House, which is, of course, located in Valparaiso, talking about their current production of The Holiday Inn, the musical, a stage production. It did open November 26th, but it's running through December 12th. We have the artistic director, also in the show, and several other things she'll talk about, Bobby Kavachtov. Welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Hi, welcome.
Well, we'd like to talk about your current show that's still running through December 12th. People are familiar with Holiday Inn, the motion picture, which was opened in 1942. The stage version, which has been adapted with a whole new libretto, different songs. There are some familiar songs in it. But tell us a little bit about the stage adaptation of Holiday Inn.
There's several differences. If anyone has watched the movie version, I'd say that this is way more inclusive. It's brought into present day, but it still has that beautiful holiday energy. It does take place over an entire year. I feel like people really think of it as like a Christmas musical, but it really just encompasses the entire about a year with all of these wonderful characters. And the music, there's been a ton of added music. Some of the original songs that were in it have slightly different flares to it. I don't want to give too much away because I want our audiences to come in and really experience it for the first time. But I'd say that in comparison from a movie to a live version, it's energy, 100%. It's complete difference in energy you get from a 1940s film to a musical.
Well, one of the things we talked about before the interview started is that how the motion picture is like a movie with music. This is really a true musical with a brand new libretto, new arrangements, everything. And of course, it all has Irving Berlin music. And the one who wrote almost 900 songs of American culture and everything. So you serve as artistic director for the Opera House, but you also are involved in several other ways in the production. Tell us about some of those.
I am. So I am the artistic director of the Opera House. However, I am starring in it as Linda Mason. And I am the costume designer and also the wig designer for the show.
Very good.
Is that because there haven't been enough volunteers that you have to wear all those different hats?
Well, previously I designed off and on for the Opera House. I designed for lots of different theaters in the area. But artistic director is a newer position for me. So that came on after I already agreed to design. Deborah Haddad is our director, and she's a very dear friend of mine. And she had asked me to design. And the conversation went, well, I really wanted to audition for your show as well. And she goes, well, I can help you. It'll be fine. So I just kind of jumped in. And this show.
So what kind of crew do you have to work with?
I have Jordan Ramersberger is my assistant. She's incredible. Christina Pals is our costume department's. She's our main costume designer for the Opera House, but she's our costume shop manager, and she is lovely, and she's come on to help with a lot of sewing. I have Helene Trembicki, who also came on to help with a lot of different sewing. And then we have a few dressers backstage that are helping as well. I brought on an old student of mine. Her name is Reagan Beckham, and she's our makeup designer as well. So we're super blessed. We have a few different volunteers that has come on to help as well. But it was a massive undertaking. Costumes for the show is insane. Oh my goodness, it's insane. My poor ensemble is in a million different quick changes. They go from turkeys to some beautiful like military dresses that they have on as show women, like, and then they also have to play normal people. So they're going between showgirls to normal, just everyday individuals walking the streets in this musical. So it's intense. My lead men have to go from 3-piece suits to their costumes that is within a show. And then they also have to be able to like layer all their costumes on top of each other, because sometimes they only have about like 20 seconds to get back on stage again with like completely different shoes and everything. So it's intense.
Yeah, overdressing is a mainstay of musical theater.
Yes, I just reached out to Christina today asking if she would add Velcro to one of my dresses because I can't make the quick change. So we'll see.
We know that the Opera House has an extensive costumes in-house already. How much had to be constructed from scratch for the show? Or did you just use your archived costumes?
We took a lot of our previous costumes that we have to use as much as we could. Because this is such a big show, we really have to try to be conscious of budget. However, because there are so many, I felt as the designer that we really didn't have time to make a ton from scratch. And so there are different added pieces that were made from scratch, but we either used what we had or we bought and then altered it to make it work for 1947 and to each of our individual acters.
So this is the second production, I think, of this season. Is that correct?
This is the third. We opened with Clue the Musical, and then we had 9 to 5.
Right. We interviewed the director for 9 to 5. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Very good. Well, we have just about a minute left. So you've already had your opening night, and so you're looking to go till December 12th. And how the ticket sales been going?
Before we ever opened during Tech Week, we already had all of our Sundays sold out. We only had 100 and some tickets left, like before we ever even opened the show. So I'd say they're going fairly well.
Very
Hoping
good.
For a fully sold out audiences from open to close.
So tell us how we can find Memorial Opera House, where it is, phone numbers, and location.
You can go to memorialoperahouse.com. And all of the phone numbers and everything is on there. But if you click on menu, then you can go to upcoming events, click on theater, and then Holiday Inn. We are located at 104 Indiana Avenue in Valparaiso. And I'd have to look up the phone number real quick.
It's 219-548-9137. We'll be speaking with the artistic director and also starring in the upcoming production of Holiday Inn the Musical for Memorial Opera House, Bobby Kovachov. Thank you so much for being on Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hester.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. And we'd like to welcome to Art in the Air. First medium was actually photography all the way back in school, and actually studied that in college and went on, but also studied studio art, but then also has a long career in arts education, arts administration, and now currently has just taken over the new executive director / presidency of the Chesterton Arts Center, Hannah Hammond-Hagman. Welcome to Art on the Air.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, Hannah, I always like to start off our show for our audience, get to know you. Your origin story, how you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us about yourself.
Sure thing. Again, thanks for this opportunity. I am from the region. So born in Chicago. All right, that's true. And then relocated to southwestern Michigan as a toddler. My parents were both artists. My father was a painter, printmaker, and my mom was a weaver and fiber artist. It's how they met in Chicago. And then they moved us out to southwestern Michigan when we were younger. I say we because I have a twin sister.
I didn't know
so my whole childhood is full of we, but I have to explain that. So yeah, we grew up in idyllic southwestern Michigan and had all the free reign that any Gen X kid has, I guess.
Which town? Which town in Michigan?
Michiana Shores. Actually.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we, we were the family that would have dinner and then leave the dirty dishes on the table to head down to the beach for an evening walk. It was a beautiful way to grow up. I spent my summers at Michiana Day Camp doing summer theater in their youth theater program. And then when I was in middle school, my mom did a huge career change and decided she wanted to become an attorney. Wow. So we moved to Valparaiso so that she could attend BU Law. And so Soph, my sister, and I started in Valpo schools at 6th grade. And so I went through Valpo public schools, studied art, and fell in love with art. Of course, mom and dad always, we had a lot of art going on in the house growing up. And I spent lots and lots of evenings and mornings, early mornings in my dad's studio, watching him paint while he blared classical music, 98.7 WFMT would be like blaring and he would be chain smoking because, it was cool then. And like watching him paint for hours and hours. So I have
what kind of printmaking did he do?
He did litho, right? But he taught at Columbia College when it was a very different institution than it is now. So, so he was also an art educator, and maybe that's kind of where my genetic bug came in for that. So then we ended up in Northwest Indiana in like kind of most, early teen years, graduated Valparaiso High School, and went off to IU, Bloomington, where I started as a comparative literature major. Film studies. I know. And then still couldn't shake that art making, right? So I ended up in the BFA program for photography at IU Bloomington, made amazing peer relationships, worked in the gallery there for work study also, which is a huge, foundational experience for me there. And then hung out at IU for a year after graduation. And then also graduated with a minor in art history theory and criticism and in gender studies. And then hung out for a year kind of getting my bearings and took off for graduate school at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So I was there from 1998 to 2000, entered the MFA photography program. But I chose SEIC because you could be in the photo program and not only make photographs, right? So I was working in lots of mixed media, some site-specific installation work, lots of molds and casting, and could do all of that there because it's an amazing, brilliant program for folks who, kind of experiment and explore across different techniques in media.
So for that final sort of thesis or show, what did you show?
This is interesting. So I did show photographs. My MFA thesis was photographs, but they were large-scale digital photographs. And at the time, that technology was still really new. So I remember all of my images were on zip disks. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, and the SEIC had just gotten this huge plotter printer. So it was like all the rage to kind of, to use these technologies was really fascinating. When you look at it now, it's like ancient in a way. But I was taking images of architectural spaces, and then scaling those to fit certain dimensions of my body. So there was like an image of a construction, like of a, what do they call it? Like a development, like a cul-de-sac development.
Sure.
And then I would print that out so that the spaces between two of these markers that I found would be my stride, right? Or something that was my height or something. Yeah. So I was kind of like making that architecture fit the architecture of me. And that was my thesis from there. And I was the kid in graduate school who said I would never teach.
Of course.
Be careful, what you say. I worked as a studio assistant for Robert Heineken for a little while, and also for his wife, Joyce Neimanis. I worked with Barbara DeGenevieve also as a studio assistant for her. And then this amazing job opened up. Joyce actually encouraged me to apply for it as a sculpture and drawing teacher for a high school for visual and performing arts in Chicago called the Chicago Academy.
Okay.
And it was like working at Fame. It was amazing. So I was there and I got to do that. I taught these glorious high school artists for a couple of years. And it was really rad because they would do their academics in the morning and then they would have 3 hours of studio all afternoon.
Wow.
And so I was working with foundational drawing for all of them and then the sculpture studio as well. So I did that. And that kind of was a real pivot point, right, in our life trajectory. And so I knew then that I would probably always teach or be involved in arts education at some level. It was an amazing time. And then I left Chicago. I moved to San Francisco and I was there for about 4 or 5 years in Oakland and in San Francisco. And again,
so what brought you to San Francisco?
I know, right? I was kind of ready to flee a bit of the Midwest, and friends were headed out there, and I had considered going to graduate school there. I applied to San Francisco Art Institute and got in and went and visited out there, and I had never been. And it's a magical city, and I wasn't really ready to be there for graduate school. So it was always kind of in my mind as this place that I might end up. And so indeed, I was out there. I worked for a kids visual arts and performing arts program, an after school program for kinder through 5th grade, where they wrote their own original play.
Wow.
And made this huge production every year. And so I got to make sets and costumes with elementary aged kids, which was a magical gift to be able to do that with those kids. Met my husband while in San Francisco, who was from Massachusetts, who had moved out there around the same time. So yeah, and then spent some time there working for after school programs and also working with a program that did theatrical work with girls, elementary age and preteen girls, as like an empowerment program. And so I learned a lot about social justice work and lots of social emotional learning and working with that program and the real impact of visual and performing arts can have on youth. It was an amazing program. So I got to cut my teeth, if you will, in all these different arts organizations and how they approached arts education, and really started to understand how that can have lasting impact, right, between teacher and student and between student and student, but also how it could transform entire communities and really kind of see that work firsthand. And so I knew, again, it was another little light bulb moment that I would probably never go back. Like, this is something that I would always want to be part of and pursue. So I was there for about 4 or 5 years in San Francisco. And then
what kind of community projects did you do, like with the children?
So a lot of it culminated in performance of some kind. So, and sometimes that was in theaters that were rented or whatever, or loaned by other organizations that the kids could do their work in. And sometimes it was public performance or collaborative temporary public art, right? So if it was storytelling workshops that then ended up as prints or components that were woven into or spoken word. So we were occupying all different kinds of spaces to make that work happen. Yeah, it was it was pretty fascinating. And kids were talking about like really deeply personal narratives, their immigration stories or their family histories, and kind of weaving those into, if they were little kids, we would kind of take those stories and talk about them in terms of superpowers. And then they would invent these superheroes by holding on to all of those personal stories and what makes them, a superhero, and how they could then transform community and the world based on all the glorious things of their own pasts and families. Yeah. And to watch like a 6th grader or even a 7-year-old kind of navigate that and in a creative process and produce something to give to other people. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So yeah, I mean, I knew that I would never not work with youth on some level or some capacity. And then Ezra, my husband, who I met in San Francisco, we decided we had an opportunity to kind of live in this house in Massachusetts, where he's from, to kind of rehab this old house in southwest metro area of Boston. And so we took off. We spent 3 weeks driving cross country, us and 2 dogs in a small car.
So
And,
where did you stop along the way? So
we spent most of that time in the Southwest because neither of us had been. So we headed South California into Southern California and then started to go across. So New Mexico, Arizona. We were in Taos for a while. We kind of hung there for a while. We kind of spent a little more time in New Mexico, but we had all the time in the world. It was one of those, we look back on it now and we're like, I don't know that we could do it again. We would love to. But yeah, it was a great time for the 2 of us. And so we came across and ended up in this little house in Massachusetts, and I ended up working for, again, another arts education nonprofit in Lexington, Massachusetts. It was an arts organization that was occupying an old elementary school building. And there was a dance studio, there was ceramic studios, visual arts studios, music studios. So it housed an umbrella, like 5 or 6 other small nonprofits, which is a really great model, So then I kind of then moved into an administrative role. It was my first time kind of making decisions at an administrative level about programming. We used to do a summer kids camp program for 150 kids every summer. So yeah, I kept doing that type of work. And then we moved to Lowell, Massachusetts and bought like our first house, first condo in Lowell. And I ended up working for an organization there called the Cultural Organization of Lowell, COOL for short. And this was it's a nonprofit that was embedded in the city's Department of Planning and Development. So this was a city who their whole vision plan had been around creative economic development, right? And they were putting money into those initiatives. So, and of course, we were deeply funded by the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And so I managed a year-long event series called Discover Lowell that was a $250,000, $300,000 grant program. So I got to work with a whole breadth of community partners and other community stakeholders to make creative work happen at all levels throughout the whole city.
That's fantastic.
So it was like, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I learned so much with that work. So we were working with studio buildings that were converted mill buildings, which now housed over 200 artist studios, right? And working with them on open studio programs and on entrepreneurship programs. And then, I got to work with library systems and creating programs and huge festivals and events. So scale wise, it was like small workshop programs and then also festivals for, tens of thousands of folks. So, yeah.
And then how did you get back to the region?
I know, right? So became a mom in 2009, which is another one of those beautiful pivotal moments. And then came back to the region about 9 years ago because my dad was failing health-wise, and I wanted him to know my kid. And we were kind of priced out on the East Coast, I'll be honest. So we made the decision to come back this way so that I could be closer to family and spend that time with my mom and my sisters and my half-brothers. They all live in Chicago. So it was great to be closer to all of them. I'd kind of maybe wandered long enough. And so we've been here ever since. And so 9 years ago, thinking about what would happen, professionally, I started teaching. I was a teaching artist again at the Lebesnick Center for the Arts in Michigan City and worked under Janet Block, who was the education director then, for about 2 or 3 years. And so I did a lot of their in-house programs and summer camp programs, and then also taught a little bit in their outreach program with Safe Harbor after school program. And then when Janet became the executive director of the Lebesnick Center, I had the great fortune of becoming her education director. So that's where I've served most, I think, since I've been back to the region is, so I served as the education director at LCA for almost 7 years until this past summer, when I came to the Chesterton Arts Center, first as the program director under Wendy Marciniak. And then after she made the decision to retire, to be with family, I threw my hat in the ring to become the executive director here. And so all of that crazy history lands me right back home again.
You've only been at Chesterton for how long?
Since June. Yeah, but I also knew, and it was a pause. The decision wasn't taken lightly. When Wendy kind of, told us that she was making the decision to move on, I was like, oh my gosh, but I knew that if I didn't try to do this, that I would regret it. So I don't know, maybe things happen for reasons, and I'm thrilled to be in the seat and in the role and with this.
So are you also the program director as well? Are you doing both jobs, or will that be?
It's a great question. Right now I'm doing both jobs, but we are seeking a program director. So there will be another person on board very soon.
Are you interviewing for that already, or do you have the person in mind?
I have the person in mind. It's been offered to the candidate. And as soon as that's all confirmed, we are going to be thrilled to announce our new team member.
Excellent.
So coming there, and by way of disclosure, I am on the board of directors as vice chair for Chesterton Arts Center for our audience. So, but spell out, some of your vision you have coming up for Chesterton Arts Center, which has been here for such a long time. But now you're in the driver's seat. So tell us a little bit about what you have. And
give us your timeline of what you want to. What have you started with already?
Sure. So like Larry said, this arts center has a deep history in this community. It's been here for over 60 years. It puts on an annual festival that is deeply loved across the region and beyond. And I think there's a real opportunity here to just grow from that. There's a glorious foundation that Wendy and her predecessors have put together. We serve hundreds of folks in our in-house and our classes and workshops. And there are lots of artists who've really grown up here at the center. And there are families within Duneland and beyond who have real family histories here, right? Like parents and grandparents have memories of the Chesterton Arts Center. And I want to hold all that. All of that's really important. But I'm also interested in using that as a foundation for us to really grow and reach even more people within our walls and through outreach programs.
So what's one of your plans for that? Yeah,
so we've started a new outreach program with the Duneland Boys and Girls Club. We started it this school year. So now our teaching artist from Chesterton Arts Center is serving kids there with weekly art classes and like an in-depth.
That was your program director for a few months. What are you planning as executive director?
Director. I really want to see us work with many more community stakeholders and partners. I want our presence really to be all over Chesterton and to work with more folks, and so that other people too are more aware of everything that we have to offer. And we have some work to do around our exhibits too. I'd like to expand and be more inclusive of who we're showing and the type of work that we're showing, along with championing the local and regional artists that we've always really been very dedicated to and will continue to be so. But I'm really interested in broadening in all ways the work that we do, including kind of reconfiguring some of our facilities to make our home more accessible, first and foremost, and to make it a better, more welcoming place for patrons and visitors and students.
And tell us about some of the plans. I know them, but our audience doesn't know about moving some of the things around, like the office and things like that.
Yeah, so there are more of us that work here now. So we need a little bit more space to do the important work that we're doing. So we're going to switch some of the spaces around, and the officers are going to move upstairs. And part of the members gallery will come down here. And we'll have a more professional space for our gift shop, that's pretty well trafficked. So yeah, and our exhibition schedule, we're planning more years out in advance so that we can offer more programming around those exhibits, including free family nights and more artist talks and demos to get folks in the building and really enjoying all of the work that's shown here.
And some of the plans long-term out, you've talked about some of it, but 3 years, 5 years, what are your visions for what's ahead?
Yeah, I would love to see this. I would love to see our building covered in murals. Our alley wall that faces downtown is a prime, beautiful spot for us to really showcase a large-scale public piece of art. So I'd love to see that happen. I would love to... But yeah, I think the outside of us should match really the beauty of everything that's happening on the inside.
Very good. And one question we've always asked our guests is, How did COVID impact you over this past year and a half, personally and artistically in your business and stuff?
Yeah. So I wouldn't be here, I don't think, if COVID hadn't happened. And I think that's a strange thing to say. But in that time, and I talked with Esther about this even, that time was a forced slowdown. And it was also a time for me to kind of reevaluate personally, where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I'm very grateful for it. It gave me more time with my kid and with my husband. And it was just a time to kind of maybe reprioritize. And I think, the arts are going to come out of this in a beautiful way. I have all optimism and confidence in that, and I think it's allowed all of us to kind of rethink, what's really relevant and important for us all.
Excellent. Well, we almost have to wrap up here. So we want to tell our audience where the Chesterton Arts Center is, websites, things
Sure.
you just had, like in November, you just had the Duneland show, and what you got coming up in December and beyond.
Indeed. So November, we hosted the Duneland Plein Air Painters for a beautiful group show. December through mid-January, through January 15th, is our members exhibit, where we invite all Chesterton Arts Center members to bring in their works for exhibit here at the center. We will be closed the 2 weeks of January, the last 2 weeks of January, to do those facility changes I mentioned. And then we're going to reopen, if you will, in the new year with a solo exhibit by Kathy Feeman.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you coming on Art on the Air. That's the new Executive Director / President CEO, Chesterton Arts Center, Hannah Hammond-Hagman. And thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
both.
you, Hannah.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, Esther. Thanks, Larry.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. Like to welcome to Art in the Air. Well, first of all, she's been in residence all of November with her at the Art Barn, and she's been doing, she's going to discuss that with us, and also we have with us the executive director. So Samantha Purze is with us. She's been doing the residency at Art Barn, and of course, Amy Navardakis is the executive director. Both of you, welcome to Art on the Air.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Larry.
Well,
Aloha. The residency is in ceramics, by the way.
Well, Samantha, what we'll start off with is we like to kind of know your story. We already know Amy's story because she's been on many times. But tell us a little bit about your background, like where you grew up and where you went to school and everything about that. And so like I always like to say, how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I grew up in Michiana Shores, Indiana. So I'm from that area. I went to college in Southern Illinois, so I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Ceramics in 2019. And then shortly after that, I completed a 2-year post-baccalaureate program in ceramics at a different university, which was in Southern Indiana. And then while I was there, I also worked as the assistant studio technician in the ceramics studio. So yeah, long story short, I guess I've taught at a lot of community studios. So I do a lot of teaching, ceramics classes, and I, show my work, kind of nationally. So at this point I've had, my work shown in, I believe 11 US states. And yeah, I'm pretty much just full-time studio artist. So,
I want to kind of take you back to your childhood because your ceramics also includes a love of maps. And I was wondering, was that a love from childhood maybe? And what led you to incorporate them into your ceramics in a decorative way?
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, so my parents have like a huge travel bug. And so growing up, we spent lots of time on the move. And so I remember being a kid, I had 2 siblings, and my older sister, she always fell asleep right away in the car, but my parents could never get me to fall asleep. So they always had to find things for me to kind of keep busy. And eventually my dad, I remember he handed me a map that just of one of the places we were going. And kind of in that moment, I became his right-hand man.
Navigator.
The navigator.
So yeah, like my interest in cartography definitely, I think, roots from that situation, and then also just traveling so much as a kid. So yeah.
And where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Michiana Shores, Indiana. So it's right along the shore of Lake Michigan, in a cabin in the woods. So.
And where do you live now?
So right now I'm kind of in limbo. I suppose, but
Just living at the art barn.
Art barn.
Yeah,
I was just going to say.
The part of the
Permanent
residency.
in residency.
Yeah, part of the residency is a live and work situation. So I live there. And after that, who knows? Hopefully another residency somewhere else. So
Very good. Well, I'm going to depart from you for a minute and ask Amy to talk a little bit about the residency program at the Art Barn. So tell us a little bit about like how you look for people for that and that whole process.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. I would like to mention that when I started at Art Barn and, got to know the facilities and the people that are here, I was like, I'd really like to be able to use one of our apartment units for an artist in residence. And so I formed a committee of people, and actually Sam is on that committee, but there's Ish Muhammad is on that committee, Jeff Manusek from the National Park Service, our program manager, myself, and our board president. And so we pulled this group of people together and some community people to help provide input about how we would do it, because I've never started an artist residency, so I didn't know how to accomplish that. So I tried to get some experts involved that could help us figure that out. And I don't know, it's been, I think, probably about a 1.5 to 2 year process. Does that sound about right, Sam? I know you haven't been on the committee the whole time, but it's it's been a process trying to figure out what do we want to achieve from the residency, and, what kind of resident are we looking for, and that kind of thing. So anyway, we think we've kind of got that worked out. And, Sam has been our first resident. And she's kind of helping us work out some of the bugs with with our processes, or with, the way we have things organized. So, so that when we have a resident come in, our next resident come in, that hopefully some of that stuff will be worked out a little bit.
How frequently are you thinking about having residencies? How many per year?
I think we're going to start. I think we're going to try and start small. I think next year we're going to try to do 2 residents. And then beyond that, I'm not sure what might be in store for 2023, but next year, I believe about 2.
So Sam, do you hand build? Do you wheel throw? What is your main focus? And did you start that in high school? Is that where you first started with ceramics?
Yeah, so I guess I'll first answer your second question. So I did start in high school. I was introduced to clay by my high school ceramics teacher. His name was Daniel Vitt. And at the time I really didn't know that I could pursue it professionally. I didn't have any artists in my family. And I hadn't seen that before. So I know that I remember really loving it, but not feeling like it was something that I could pursue until I was in college. And I took a ceramics class at SIU, and I saw, like, for the first time ever, I was surrounded by people who were really pursuing clay as a career, whether that be the grad students or the professors. And so I kind of, it felt like coming home, and it felt like something that I really could then finally pursue, that I was interested in. And then to answer your first question, I guess, I started off throwing primarily. And I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And within the last, I'd say 3 years, maybe 3.5, I made a switch to hand building, actually. And what led me to that was really just the change in pace. I think when you're throwing, it's really easy to get caught up in the speed, how fast the wheel is spinning and how fast you can move the clay. And my brain already operates 1,000,000 miles an hour. So I feel like, starting to hand build, it forced me to slow down and really consider the form and consider the mark left behind from my fingerprints. And I really enjoy that slowed down pace. So
I agree. There's such an earthiness about clay anyway. It comes from the earth, and it's just, it's very therapeutic besides, having your hands on it. And I also prefer hand building to wheel throwing. I know a lot of people combine both of them So have you always been functional, or do you also do sculptural work?
Yeah, when I was in school, I actually primarily did sculpture for like half of my time there. And I eventually got to the point where I started to realize there was something really special about someone being able to use something that I've made day to day. And so I'm really drawn to the idea that pots can be this thing that brings people together, whether it be through like group gatherings or family occasions, big family meals. I come from a big family. And so I think that aspect of it really, really draws me to making functional work. And just the fact that something that I can produce with my hands can then be handled by someone else and really appreciated in that way really interests me.
Well, and also functional can be sculptural as well.
Something you wrote, Sam, was I embrace the imperfection of the human touch through the tactile pinch marks and asymmetrical shapes. So that's kind of part of what you do. You like the human touch, I guess, incorporated into your work. Would that be correct?
Yeah, totally. I think that I think sometimes art can feel far away. When you walk into a gallery space, you can feel a bit disconnected from what you're seeing. And there's just something so nice about being able to pick up a piece of pottery, hold it in your hands, really appreciate kind of the history of the marks that were made in the building process and also the decorating process. And I like the idea that, celebrating imperfections as decorative marks, because we're all human after all, and nothing is truly perfect. And so why not celebrate that instead of trying to cover it up? So
it's so true. Right now in my hands is a ceramic cup that a friend made. And it's so comforting to know that he made it, and it's part of my daily life. It's really beautiful.
So Sam, tell us about, a lot of people may not understand, and maybe also Amy, you can jump in if need be. What's involved in a residency? I mean, you're actually there, so we understand that, and you're kind of living there, but like, what's your day-to-day operation like this past month that you went through, when you were doing this? Like, say, okay, I get up in the morning, what happens? Just kind of like a timeline.
Yeah. So for me, the day in the life of Sam at the Art Barn, I wake up and have my coffee out of a handmade mug. I walk, I commute to work, which is a walk across the driveway, and I work full time in the studio. So I'll
say hi to all the critters on your way.
Yeah, right. So I'll spend like 8 to 10 hours in the studio, and the nice thing about the ceramic studio at the Art Barn is that it's in an area where it's kind of essentially like separated from the rest of like the commotion that happens day to day. And so I'm able to really like be in a space where I can focus on what I'm working on. And yeah, I'm kind of a night owl, so I'll stay until after dark and then commute back to the apartment and get some rest or journal and sketch, and then wake up and do it all again the next day. So, it's been a really, really productive time for me, and I've been able to focus on really developing some new forms and things that have been floating in my head for a while that are finally coming to fruition. So,
can you talk about what that is? Can you describe some of this new work?
Yeah, so I'm working on some new mug shapes, which previously I was making some mugs that were sort of intentionally precarious. So they would have like really narrow foot, like a really narrow bottom section that would then rest on the table. And I liked the way that they looked aesthetically, but they didn't function that well because I found once you actually try to use them, they tip over really easily. So I've kind of been sketching out some forms that have these really like exaggerated bottom sections. And I look at a lot of postmodern design and architecture, and I pull from that when sort of designing the forms of my work. And so if you look at any of that, you'll see that there's a lot of exaggerated shapes and sort of bizarre compositions. And so that's what I'm trying to pull from in this new work. So it's really exciting to have like kind of all these things floating around in your head and then get, finally the time and space to work through those ideas in the physical like world. So
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. Now, for Amy, what does Art Barn gain out of having a residency? You may have touched on this a little bit, but maybe expound on what the value of having an artist in residence is for Art Barn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, Larry. Because we can't do these just out of the generosity of our heart, right? So we have structured the program to provide a what do you call it? A work give back situation, right. Sam. So when we recruit or when we, go through the applications from our artists in residence, we kind of want to know, how, what kind of things they can bring to the table, like some of their past experiences working in other studios or working with students or working with the public in some way. So we require a 15-hour work give back. And so in our ceramic art studio, there's a lot of things that happen. There's clay that needs to be reclaimed, which is, it's time consuming to do that, and just kind of managing that whole process, which is, everything from like, everything kind of being in water to, then, forming it into actual clay that people can use in class the next time. And there's also a lot of cleanup that's involved. Clay is, it's a messy art. So there's a lot of, dust and, things that kind of hang around in the studio after people are done working. So it's really important for us to be able to have a resident that can kind of help us manage our studio a little bit, especially during busy times for us. Because when we have several ceramics classes going at a time, or like when we've got a summer camp going, there's a lot of students, a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of, clay that has to be reclaimed because there's a lot of clay going through the studio, and, also being able to, have places to store all that stuff too. So a resident really helps us to kind of, manage that and organize it.
Do the residents do talks or classes with your ceramic students?
So when we're going to be talking to residents, I'll talk about Sam too, but in general, we want to know, what kind of, how our resident might want to give back, whether that's in the form of doing a program, an exhibition, an open studio, or something like that. So in Samantha's case, we wanted to be able to offer additional studio time to people that are taking ceramics classes or that have taken ceramics classes from us in the past, because there's, a lot of people don't have access to a kiln and all the things that go along with ceramic art. So it gives them time to be able to work on either their pieces, that they're additional time to work on their pieces beyond their class time, or to be able to just work on projects in general, and then be able to fire those, glaze them, and then the final firing. So Sam has been working with us on an open studio. She's offered a 5-week open studio class. Mm-hmm. So we did a 5-week open studio, and I think that the students that were part of that, were really able to benefit from that additional time.
Excellent.
So Sam, we've asked this about some of them. So let's talk about how COVID may have impacted you as an artist and as a person over this last, year and a half. That's something we've been asking all of our people, and how some people have found it was made them more creative, and some people kind of pulled into their shell and didn't do anything. So, but how did it affect you?
Yeah, so I'd like to like throw a positive spin on the situation, but I don't know if I can truthfully do that. It has been a hard time, especially so working in a ceramic studio is such a communal thing. There's so much camaraderie that comes from working alongside other people and other artists. And so when the pandemic first started, I was working at Indiana University Southeast and in the ceramic studio there, which, as you can imagine, we had like usually we would have lots of students in the studio all the time and be able to bounce ideas off one another and just work alongside other people. And I truthfully feel that I owe like who I am as a person and artist to those kinds of interactions with others. And so it was really hard when we couldn't do that anymore. I went through probably a long time of just lack of motivation to be making work, but then also feeling almost guilt that I was not productive as usual. Because when you are trying to do this to make a living, you have to rely on making work full time to sell or to show. So it was a hard time. I feel like now I'm with this residency truly diving back into things. And I think so I'm kind of teaching myself how to be motivated again and how to keep my hands busy. And sometimes as artists, when you don't feel the inspiration, you just have to keep busy and it comes back to you eventually. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, and you can't really do this at home too much. I mean, you might have some of the tools, but you probably do not have a kiln and everything. The other thing I was going to ask you is, so now that your residency is over, because we're airing the show in December, what's next for you?
Yeah, so after the holidays this year, I am actually going to be doing another residency in North Carolina. So I'm going to a place, it's called the Penland School of Craft, and that's going to be starting at the end of January. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. I'm hoping to do residencies for the next couple of years and just kind of hop around a bit. So my interest in travel comes back through that.
So Sam, is your family still in the area?
Yep. My family is kind of spread out in Northwest Indiana, Chesterton, Michigan City, Michiana Shores. So
what are we looking for, Amy? Back to Art Barn. Some of the things, we might as well take this opportunity. This is airing in December. What's coming up there in terms of event-wise at Art Barn?
Well, we've got our holiday gift gallery going on, so people can take advantage of that opportunity to do a little shopping for the holidays. We don't, because everything's kind of local, we don't have any supply chain issues. So there's some really nice things here, and we invite people to come and take a look at that. Probably by the time this airs, most of our December events are going to kind of be wrapped up. I believe on December 4th, we're having an ornament workshop. And I know it's pretty full, so I'm thinking the registration is probably going to be closed. But give us a call if you think you want to be part of that. We'll be making some ornaments, and we invite families to come and do that together.
One real quick question, Sam. Was there an exhibition at the end of your residency, or kind of a little showcase? Maybe not a big exhibition at the end when you did your residency?
Yeah, so we're doing an exit show at the Art Barn in January
8th through February 12th.
Yes, there we go.
So yeah, we'll be featuring some of Sam's work from her residency alongside work by the Duneland Photography Club.
May I have an Art Barn question? So are
Sure.
people allowed to just come and sketch out on the property, like plein air painters, so is the property open to the public for that type of use?
Well, I think in general, I mean, anybody is welcome, but we do like if someone's going to be on the property, especially this time of year, because we do allow some hunters to use our property. So we always like to know if there's someone coming. So just let us know that you're here. But typically we don't have we're not bothered by anybody being out here. We invite people, but we do also have an open studio that goes on between 1 and 4 on Tuesdays.
Well, tell us how we can find the Art Barn in our audience. So those of you who may never traveled out to the northern realms of Valparaiso, tell us how to get there.
So the easiest way is we're in Jackson Township, and we're on 400 East. So we're on 400 East. So we're a mile south of 6 and 3 miles north off of 2.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. That's Samantha Purze, the artist in residence who just completed her residency in November. And of course, Amy Navradakis, who's always up there as the executive director. And Art Barn is at 695 North 400 East in Valparaiso. And you can find out more information at artbarnschool.org. Both of you, thank you so much for being on Art on the Air.
Thank you, Sam and Amy.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, guys.
You've been listening to Art in the Air, and we'd like to thank our guests this week on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art in the Air is heard every Friday at 11 a.m. and rebroadcast Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP. Art in the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m. Plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Thanks again to Greg Kovach, WVLP station manager, and Tom Maloney, vice president of radio operations for Lakeshore Public Radio. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art in the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant and the National Endowment for the Arts. Underwriters for Art in the Air, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments and Marilyn Van, Arts Patron. Art in the Air is always looking for financial support. We'd like to thank our current supporters. If you're looking to support Art in the Air, Esther and I especially would invite you to become an underwriter of this program in particular. We have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA. You can find out support information there. So don't just be an Art on the Air listener. Become a supporter or underwriter in whatever amount you're able to do so we continue to bring you great content and this great local programming. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. And you'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. Information about Art in the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That's Breck, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck, BRECH.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Ray.